Hi, I'm Sean Shapiro from the Toronto Police Service, and this is TPS Traffic Jam, episode number 4. It's very exciting. Today I'm joined by Carolyn Swinson. She's the Director of Victim Services for MAD Toronto, and we're going to talk about stuff and things. So good morning, and how are you doing?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you. I'm good on the bright sunny morning.
I got a chance to go outside today, which is rare, and it really, really is fantastic out there.
Yes,
But
beautiful.
I'm glad to have you here, and I'm so glad
Thank
that
you.
we're actually getting to talk. So let's talk about MAD. Many people don't understand or know what MAD is.
No, and it's that's absolutely true. MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, it's a group of volunteers. The mission statement for MAD is to stop impaired driving and to support the victims of a violent crime. And the one things that MAD they know about us is maybe they'll see the PSAs on the TV and they'll maybe notice when we're advocating for change with the courts. The one thing that a lot of people don't know about is the amount of support that we provide to victims, and that's a huge that's a huge piece of what MAD does, and we provide support to thousands and thousands of victims every year.
And MAD, I mean, since I was a kid, I remember MAD messaging in education
Yeah,
in
yeah,
schools and partnerships with police services, always talking about the issues surrounding impaired operation of vehicles, drinking and driving. And yet we're still, I mean, I'm now
oh,
much older than I was, and we're still talking
yeah.
about it.
I know it's really frustrating. The only thing that I can say, if we do lots of public awareness, and right now our school assembly program goes into most high schools in the country, and so we are making young people aware. But it's very frustrating when you still see the number of people who are charged. I mean, right now the latest numbers that we've got that 10 people every hour are charged either with a criminal offense or short-term license suspensions due to being either impaired by alcohol or drugs, and that's really that's really scary. That people are still doing that. The only thing I can say is that if we didn't do that public awareness and we didn't do that education, those numbers would be much worse.
I agree with you, and it's not that people are unaware of the fact that
No.
that there are risks involved, that it's illegal. It's that they're making choices to get behind
Yes.
the wheel of a car.
And that's a difficult thing that you have to get through to people. When you ask people, why did you do it? I mean, the answers are, well, I didn't think I was impaired. I didn't understand I was impaired. I was only going for, I was only a couple of minutes from home. I mean, it's that behavior that we have to change and say that, whatever alcohol you have, you just don't or drugs, you just don't get behind the wheel of the car afterwards.
Yeah, there's really no. We talk about many people ask us when we talk about
Yeah.
how much can you have, how much is safe. Well, the really only answer is nothing.
Yeah,
You should not have anything in your system.
exactly. That's the only safe thing, and I know that we have the limits that are purely for policing purposes, and that if you blow between point zero 0.05 and point zero 0.09, you're going to get a license suspension, and over that, it's a criminal offense. But you're absolutely right. The only safe thing is zero.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and people don't know how to gauge. I mean, they say, well, if I have one an hour, I should be okay. Well, should be isn't definite,
No.
and impairment can come in at any level, any amount of alcohol or drugs in your system, and everyone
Yeah.
deals with it differently.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Everybody is different. The different weights, the different, they react differently, and there's no hard and fast rule with that.
absolutely. A lot of collisions occur when people are sober. So,
Yeah,
you then add delays, impaired function to that mix, and the
yeah.
chances are going
Oh,
up
it just
tremendously.
yes. Well, it's bad. It's the driving under the influence of alcohol, the risk factors go up. The same thing, driving under the influence of drugs, mostly marijuana, go up. But if you add those two things together, you put the alcohol and drugs together, then the incidence of being involved in a crash skyrockets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I find, like you said, very frustrating. And
Mhm.
last weekend and today, as we record this, is the 12th of May, 2022.
Yeah.
And last weekend we arrested 14 people for impaired operation offenses in the city of Toronto
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't factor into the people we didn't catch because they
Yes.
managed to avoid police or they any number of things. It's scary, and we've had
Yeah.
numbers of recently. The long weekend, I think it was 31 or 32 people. Again, it's
Yeah.
not acceptable. Now,
Yeah.
everyone I imagine has a story as to why they got involved with MAD.
Yeah.
What's your story?
Well, in 1993, our eldest son, Rob, was 27 years old, and he would gone out on a Friday night. He owned a bicycle store, and he'd gone out to pick something from the warehouse and to buy his girlfriend a Valentine's gift. And unfortunately, on the way home, his car was hit by a young woman she was 32 years old, and she'd only had a driver's license for 10 days, but she was driving with a BAC level of 200, and she just basically wiped his car off the road. And so and that so it's the one reason the person who killed him was acquitted. The judge decided that her rights had been violated when the police made the demand for the breath test. And probably that one incident is one of the reasons that I've stayed involved with Matt for so long, because I was so offended by the fact that, somebody could kill somebody and not be held accountable for it.
Wow.
So for the longest time, the one thing that my family has advocated for was mandatory alcohol screening. And as of 2018, we now have mandatory alcohol screening. But that's how long I mean, it took decades to get to get that legislation changed. So Rob was killed on February the 12th, 1993. But on February the 13th, 1981, my father in England um, he had gone out on a Saturday night for a drink with a friend, and they were walking home. And on the way home, a 19-year old who'd been on a pub crawl for the evening hit my dad and his friend, and his dad was killed, and the other gentleman was seriously injured. So I have very strong reasons for people not to drive impaired, because my family knows full well what it's like to lose people who are very close, very important. And the older I get, the more I miss my son and wish he was here to help out. At this
I,
point.
I, I
So
can't imagine your loss, and I'm sorry for your loss. It's something that, unfortunately, until you've experienced loss, many
yeah,
people can't relate to it.
no,
And just like being a parent, you can't relate to it until you are one, and no one
exactly.
understands. But I can't imagine what you've gone through. But I appreciate, and I'm so thankful that you have channeled that into doing this wonderful work that you do,
Yeah.
and making positive changes like mandatory alcohol screening, which is so important and so useful and is such a benefit to us as police officers, trying to keep the roads safe.
Exactly. And I think that maybe mandatory alcohol screening is one of the reasons why we've been seeing an uptick in some of the charges, because that's available to police. And the other thing that I've noticed, because every morning I get all the impaired driving news from across the country and the U.S., more people are calling in, more citizens are calling in somebody that they think is driving impaired. So I know from reading those reports that it will be somebody was arrested after a call had come in. And that's one of the things with that we've run a campaign 911, is to encourage people to call the police if they see somebody who's driving impaired, and it gives a list of the things to look out for.
That's fantastic. Two things I want to speak to what mandatory alcohol screening is for those who are listening and
Yep.
watching who may not understand it, and I can explain that. And there's something else I was going to talk about, and I've forgotten what that is. But
Okay.
the fact is that prior to mandatory alcohol screening coming into play, police officers had to have a reasonable suspicion that the driver was under the influence of alcohol. And what that means is, whether there was a smell of alcohol or an admission of alcohol of having had it in their bloodstream, they have to believe that it was there. And at which point a roadside screening device could be utilized. And that is no longer the case. Now we don't require that suspicion. We now have the ability of simply screening everyone, if that were to be the plan for the night. And every officer will make their own plan, or maybe a sergeant or a team lead may make the plan for, every fifth car is going to be searched or checked. And there's no bias at that point. It's everybody or every fifth or whatever is the plan. And that takes the person who may have successfully, reduced their, may be very good at what they do, maybe a professional drinker, which we see people who don't show the signs of alcohol as much as others. And we've heard some wild stories, especially in schools, where people are consuming drugs and alcohol in such a way that there's no clue, or there's no odor, there's nothing to go by. So this really opens it up, and people who would not have been caught are now being caught.
Yep. Which is great.
Truly, truly.
Yes.
It is one of the most litigated charges, period. There's an entire specialty of law when it comes to defense of and people who specialize in defending those who are arrested and charged for impaired operation offenses.
Yeah.
So the average person who's charged can expect to spend $15,000 to $30,000 in a defense, and that maybe my numbers are. I don't know. You may know.
I think you're right.
So it's not cheap. But some people might be motivated simply on saving a few dollars. Don't drink, and that tends to be very often the excuse we hear. I didn't want to pay for a cab. I didn't want to leave my car and have to take another cab home. Such petty, minor reasons, in my opinion, for why they would then get behind the wheel of a car and potentially kill someone, themselves or others. It's really sad.
Yeah, no, it's and when you think about it, I mean, it's really a dumb thing to think about. What is the cost of a cab? Is the cost of dealing with an impaired driving charge? There's nobody out there that couldn't find a better use of spending the money than spending, tens of thousands of dollars on depending an impaired driving charge. A cab or Uber is an absolute bargain.
Absolutely, and that's if everything goes well. When things don't go well, it's the potentially for themselves the lifelong injuries and the therapy they may need if they take someone else's life, the multitude of individuals who are impacted by when people are killed, when communities are broken, all because of these choices. And it is choices. I hear excuses, but there are choices made by drivers, and sadly, when you are impaired, you don't make good ones.
No, exactly. And that's why our constant messaging is it's too late to make those choices when you're out there. You need to make those decisions about how you're going to get home safely before you leave the house. And because, as you say, when you're impaired, your judgment, you're not making the right decisions, and that's too late. It's too late. You need to know how you're going to get home safely before you leave the house.
I think it's interesting. I grew up just north of the city, and I had experiences. I was involved with different organizations in high school about impaired driving, Ontario Students Against Impaired Driving, and so on. And we all had been touched by people in our community, students at our school. People who were killed when I was in high school. We had students who transferred to our school after they were involved in collisions that killed their friends.
Yeah.
That was when I was in high school, and I had already experienced some level of impact from an impaired driver. I'm thankful that I didn't lose anyone closer to me, but I was still exposed to it. And then as a police officer, we see it time and time again. I've arrested countless number of people for impaired operation, and we see the carnage.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? It has a ripple effect. It doesn't affect just two families. Even to this day, even, it's so long ago since our son was killed. And on the anniversary of his death, and we post something on Facebook, and the heartbreaking, messages from his friends, even after so long, it's still, it affects so many people.
And it doesn't go away. It's lost that
No,
without
that's
closure.
it.
You can't fix it, and there's nothing to do except,
Yeah, close is a word that I don't like because there is no closure.
yeah.
You never get over losing. You don't get over losing somebody. You learn to live with things, but life won't ever be the same.
Well, I've lost people through natural means or
Hmm.
sickness, and there's no closure there either.
No.
But this is worse. This
Yeah.
is a million times
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
I see a multitude of pictures behind you. Lots of
Yes.
people. Let's talk about that.
Behind me, this is the memorial wall. We have one that's national, which has thousands of pictures on it. This one is all victims from the Toronto chapter of who that mostly victims that we've been involved with in the chapter. I probably know almost every family on the screen behind me, and the people who've either been killed or injured in impaired driving crashes. There's a couple of police officers on that wall, and one of the things, as I said, we provide support to families. One of the things that we do with families is go to court with them, and so I would think that over the years I've been to probably over 50 trials with families, and it's important to do that. And because most people end up, you have somebody who's killed in impaired driving crash, they've probably never been in a courtroom before. They don't know what their rights are. They don't know whether they're being treated properly, and and I think that having somebody who's gone through it with them and can help them out with answering questions. Sometimes I advocate for them. Sometimes I've had crown attorneys tell people that they don't want to read their victim impact statements in court, which is the right that victims have. So sometimes I will advocate, but mostly provide support. And one of the reasons that we had the banner behind us made, because one of the programs that probably people don't know what that we do is a program called the Missing You program, and these were made for the people who speak at the Missing You program. Missing You program is for people who are first time offenders. Through the sentencing in the courts, the judge will order them to attend the Missing You program, and there are currently three running in the GTA area, and it's just a one-time event, but we have a video specifically geared for people who've been convicted, and they will show the video, and then we will have two or three victims who will share their personal stories with the people, with those people who've been charged and convicted. Um, they won't have anybody in that group who's killed or injured somebody, but what we hope is those people we know they've done it once. We just hope that with sharing our personal stories with them, that they're not going out to do it again. And so we have a group of dedicated volunteers who will share their stories with people.
I've had the good fortune of listening to many different stories and speaking to people who've been affected by impaired drivers and tragic loss, and I'm glad we're not going into deep into the stories because I don't really want to cry on camera.
No, no.
It's
Okay.
hard not to be
Hmm.
moved and affected by these stories of horrible loss.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we hope, that if you hear us, if these people actually see somebody who has been, and speaks from the heart, and usually at the end of those, people will thank us, and they will realize, they'll thank us and say, you know what, I didn't think, and I don't know what would happen if it was if I lost my child, and so I'm not sure. I'm not. I'm realistic. I'm sure that we won't get through to everybody, but we hope that we make a difference to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'd like to see maybe we can get to more people before they're convicted to
Yeah,
get the message so they never kill anyone.
yeah,
I've recently seen a trend when I create videos based on the number of arrests that we've made. Quite a number of people who are currently on charges, multiple convictions, and they're still being caught behind the wheel of a car while impaired by drugs or alcohol,
yeah,
and that is a truly scary. I mean, it's scary that we're getting so many anyway, but the
yeah.
number of people who are repeat offenders is mind-boggling.
Yeah, no, it's horrifying, and we see that, and we have one tragic incident just a couple of years ago, that was in Toronto, where two sisters were just out for a walk one evening, and the person there who one of the sisters sadly died, and the other was severely injured, and that person was out with a suspended license.
The
And
fairly off topic. Well, on or off topic. Tennessee, I think it was. It recently came into or added a new law where if a impaired driver kills the parent of a child,
yeah.
they are then responsible for paying to support that child until I don't know for how long, paid child support of some kind.
Think it was until they kind of got through high school. But yeah, no, I saw that, and I thought that would. I wondered if that would make people sit up and think if they felt that they had to be responsible for that, financially for that child,
It's not just
children.
I think just as a discussion, I mean,
Yeah,
people don't take into consideration what happens, what that ripple effect, as you mentioned earlier. It's not just a parent; it's a support person. It's financial
yeah.
support.
Oh,
It's emotional support. It's everything. It's is that enough? But
I
it's
don't
certainly a
know.
good start.
It's certainly one of the toughest things that I know, because you lose somebody in an impaired driving. You're going through two processes. You're going through the criminal trial. You're also probably going through a civil suit as well with the driver. And in most cases, the people who are going through the civil suit is in the trauma that's involved in going through that is just it's mind-boggling. The way that people are treated, and the way that they have to go and have their whole lives pulled apart and things. But I think that I don't think I've seen anybody who's gone through that not be traumatized by it, and not be shocked by the process of going through the civil suit.
Sure,
It's
because at the end of the day, it's how can they pay you less, and it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how much money you end up getting, it doesn't get them back.
no,
It doesn't fix it.
no.
But my goodness, what would you say to a new driver as they start their career as a driver? To hopefully set them on the right path.
Oh, well, I think everybody has to understand that we are all responsible for our own actions. Nobody else is going to be making the right decisions for you, and you have to learn to be the big person, and the person who's going to say, um, and uh, and is that I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to be careful, and um, and that I and it's difficult with teenagers, but to stand up and not be caught up in that, in that group, because everybody's doing it. I must be the same thing. We have to learn to think for us, think for themselves, make good decisions. I currently have um, teenage grandchildren, and I watch them, and I'm really proud of the fact that they are in certain circumstances where people are doing things that are not, that are risk situations, and they just say, "No, I'm not doing it." And we have to have the kids learn that that's what they must do, regardless of what they are. Be responsible, and we want all the young people to grow up and be just great kids.
My
Feel the
goal
goals
with,
in life.
well, that's it. My goal in all the traffic safety that we talk about and all the enforcement when I was on the road is the goal is to have people go home safely.
Yeah.
It's not to punish people for a simple lapse in judgment when they decided to go 5 kilometers over. It's to change behavior,
Yeah.
and education is where we focus. Majority of our efforts is trying to be preventative as opposed
Yes.
to reactive. Um, for the new drivers, from my perspective, it's not just about not doing it yourself, but also standing up to people who do choose to do it.
Yes.
Being aware in trying to get that agreement reality
Yeah.
where your friends all support the same ideals. Obviously, if you're hanging
Exactly.
out with people that don't, you may want to change your friends. But if you have I don't think people appreciate the level of their own power. I think that someone standing up and telling people what they think is right and sharing
Hmm.
stories and sharing experiences, even as a young person, can
Yeah.
make incredible inroads with their peers.
Yeah, no, they can make a big difference, and absolutely, if you see somebody who's doing something, then step up, be the big person.
You know what I was really impressed? A number of reports we've had in the last year were callers from one's own family who resulted in an arrest. At least
Yeah,
2 or 3 times this year, we've had people who called in to report their own family member, and
yeah,
I cannot tell you how proud I am of those people. They deserve an award because
yeah.
that's the hardest thing to do, is to
I
call on your own.
I know, but that's really that's an amazing thing to do. And I know a couple of years ago there was a report of a young man that called his mother because his mother was driving impaired, and that young man deserves a medal because.
Absolutely.
And no, it's really important that people do stand up. It's not a call that we get into the Toronto chapter. It's actually not uncommon that people will phone and said, one of my family members is drinking and driving. What do I do about it? And so I walk them through the fact that if you're concerned, phone the police, but make sure that you give them information. The person has to be driving at the time that they're pulled over. And there is actually on the Mad Canada website, there is a brochure there um, that to help people out with if your loved one drinks and drives. So
It's a difficult conversation. We
yes, it's
appreciate
tough.
that,
Yeah.
and just know that you could. It's not just about saving that person. It's about saving
No, it's
the countless others.
absolutely.
Uh, we, uh, we talk about the preventative. We talk about what happens when people are convicted or not convicted. What are the education points that you're working on right now? What is Mad Canada working on right now that you want to address?
Well, the right now we've got the campaign 911 coming up for this summer. That's a summer campaign. We have that's encouraging people to phone in. There's boating, the safe boating, because we know that we don't want people out there driving boats that are impaired as well. We usually most of the time right now I don't think we're working on anything provincially. um, we have done a lot of work in other areas, and but that's mainly um, we sorry we sadly lost you, our CEO a few weeks ago, and
Oh, I'm
so
sorry to hear that.
you didn't, yeah, no, that was a really tough thing. I'd worked with Andy Murray for 25 years, and so it was a big loss. And so right now we just looking for somebody who is going to take over from him. So
Big shoes to fill.
yes, huge, huge. Yeah, I don't know anybody. I mean, he was done such an incredible job, and I don't think there's any legislation in this country that doesn't have his name on it, whether it's provincially or federally. With the the cannabis rules and the mandatory alcohol screening between Andy Murray and Professor Robert Solomon from the University of Western Ontario. They basically have been responsible for uh, most of those changings. And one of the things, you talked about prevention. Matt has always looked at what things will, is to do license suspensions rather than punishment, because we want, the, the feeling is that if you do something that's immediate, it's more likely to have a bigger effect than
The immediate license suspensions are fantastic. Unfortunately, we do
mhm.
see people who are suspended and as a result of impaired operation who still decide to get behind the wheel of a car, whether they
Yeah,
have long term or they're on interlock. All of these measures are great if people follow them, but sadly, we keep coming to one thing. If someone is a continual user or
yeah.
abuser of alcohol, they tend to make poor decisions while under the influence of that substance.
Yeah, it's very bothering, the number of people who still keep driving while they're under license suspensions. We know it's a very high percentage of people to do that, and I guess that we probably the only thing that is going to totally stop that is when we have cars that are, where the technology is there, that we have cars that that the driver needs to be sober before the car will start. And I think that will be there. I know that technology is available right now. It's just getting the political wherewithal. And I think in some places in the US, they're probably further ahead than we are with that. And I think that probably that's going to be the only thing. I mean, we've been working for so long to educate people, but as you say, there are so many people who continue to break those rules, and
And sadly, even with interlock devices where you have to provide a breath
yeah,
sample, people do things like have a passenger, provide a breath sample. There's also people who want to break the rules
yeah,
or are planning to do what they're going to do. They find ways around it. Laws really keep honest people honest.
yes, yeah. So we have to look for that technology with the cars.
Well, maybe when they're autonomous and no one needs to drive but the computer.
Yeah,
Hopefully, one day we'll find a solution to end the tragic loss of life on our roads because of people who make poor decisions.
yeah,
If people want to get more information or they want to support Matt, if they want to get involved,
yeah.
how would one do that?
Well, there's all the with the chapter with MAD is run by, there's a small group of people actually that are run the national office, but most of it is run by volunteers. And so there's the MAD Toronto has a website, and if people like to, want to volunteer with us, they can go to the website and fill in the volunteer application. And there's a screening process that people have to go through. For instance, we won't have anybody volunteering with us who's got current charges before the courts, and so so they can go online and fill in that application form, and hopefully now that COVID is over, get back to doing things. And
The in
well,
person things.
yes, exactly. Well, one of the things that our volunteers um, uh, is the ride program
Yes.
that there's never any shortage of volunteers who are willing to go out and, till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with the police officers and go out with them and just, thanking people for driving sober
It,
and being there on
It's always
those
a pleasure
rides.
to have you at those
Yeah,
events. I used to work ride programs all the time, especially as
yeah,
a motor squad officer, and it was always great. Not just because you brought coffee and donuts, but because it's nice to have you with
yeah,
us and working towards that goal of having safer roads through
yeah,
ending impaired driving.
yeah.
Um, and what is the website for the
It's
Mad
just
chapter?
Mad Toronto.
MadToronto.com.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's fantastic. Anything to leave with? Because I think what we'll do is we'll end this episode here, and I know we could talk for a lot longer because there's
Yeah.
so much to cover. But we can do this again, and we'd love to have you back again.
Yeah, that would be great. One of the things I'd like people to know is the support that we give to victims. And so if there are victims out there that need support, they can get in touch with the chapter. We run a monthly support group for victims of impaired driving, and that's been online for the last couple of years. So it's so long as people have got a computer, they can join us and they can find that information out. And we just, our message is the same. We just please think about your actions and just do the right thing. And if you're going out there, if you're going out partying, if you're drinking or taking drugs, then just please don't get behind the wheel of a car.
There are so many better alternatives
Yeah.
from using walking, rolling. If we're talking, I want to include people with different mobility options.
Yeah.
But not driving, not getting behind the wheel of a car. Take an Uber, take a taxi, take a
It's
bus, take a train. There are even services now that will come and pick up you and your car. They'll bring a driver to follow you home, so your vehicle arrives with you, and then it's available the next day. I will say that many people are not understanding how long it takes for alcohol to leave their bodies, their systems, and they get up the next day thinking they're sober and drive, and they're still impaired.
Well, I know several cases where there's been a death, and it's early in the morning, and it's because the person's been out drinking the night before and gone to sleep and thought thought that they were okay to get up the next morning and drive, and they're still impaired.
Here's a question. It's interesting. I think it's interesting. I wonder if people who are drinking, if they knew exactly, if they could look at their arm and see how much their blood alcohol content was in their blood, if they would then make a decision, not having to blow, it was there on their arm, a readout. If they would know that they were putting lives in jeopardy, would they willingly do it?
That would be interesting. But I know that where people have gone through the testing, that they have been drinking and just been checking the BAC levels, people are really shocked at the numbers and the fact that they didn't think that they were impaired, but yet technically they were over the legal limit, which goes back to the say that people's judgment. It goes to judgment. Your judgment
Absolutely.
is impaired.
I know we said we were ending, but at the same time, I just remembered something. There was a video that I saw, I think when I was a recruiter, maybe before I even became a police officer, and it was booking footage of a gentleman who came through the booking halls of a police station,
Yeah.
and the best way to describe them is as a fall down drunk,
Yeah.
and they blew very close to the limit. They were just hovering around the limit of what was actually. Let's make a number up of 100 is what they would have blown. They then had a young woman come through, and she appeared stone cold sober, and she was 300.
Yeah.
So just because someone seems to be okay, doesn't mean they're okay.
No, it's a
And
tolerance. It's a tolerance level. If you're used to drinking that much, that you are not going to show the signs of impairment. That's why mandatory alcohol screening is
so good.
such a good tool to have.
Yeah, I am someone who occasionally will have a beer, and because I am so infrequent with my consumption of alcohol, that one beer is plenty, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't drive after it.
Good.
That's it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining
You're
us,
welcome.
and
Thank you.
we'll be in touch. We'll do this again.
Great. Thank you.